Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the resolution. Colleagues, today is the 50th anniversary of the fall of Saigon. It marks the end of the Vietnam War in 1975 on April 30th. On this day, we honor the loss of lives and the contributions of the Vietnam War veterans, both from the United States and from the Republic of Vietnam. On this day, Vietnamese refugees and Vietnamese Americans, we reflect on the heartbreaking failure that led to the crushing shame of fleeing a homeland. You see around my neck a scarf, 3 stripes on a field of yellow. That was the freedom flag of the Republic of Vietnam. A democracy lost. That is why we're here working so hard in Oregon and the US to keep our democracy. Amidst the chaos and loss of war, Vietnamese American of Oregon and across the US have lived through painful and complicated era. But we have responded with resilience, strength, and perseverance. As a refugee who came to Oregon to build a new life after fleeing Vietnam, I know the significance it is for Vietnamese American Oregonians to tell our stories and to know that others are listening. Stories of the past do not stay in the past. They continue to live within us, whether we decide to recognize them or not. But if we don't acknowledge our past and face our choices, we risk repeating past mistakes. Colleagues, do you recall the image of the napalm girl, Kim, the 9-year-old girl whose village has been incinerated by napalm? She's running down a road with her clothes singed off, flesh burning. War is ugly, devastating, horrific. What is it good for? Nothing. It is an act of last resort. We may disagree with our government with the war. However, we need to agree that our soldiers put their lives on the line of duty and was fighting for a just and right cause. The Vietnam War was the U.S. strategy of containment of communism. Communism during the war may not have a tangible face. However, the evil our soldier and Vietnamese American were fighting was real. An evil so real and terrifying that waves and waves of hundreds of thousands of refugees fled Vietnam at the risk of death in search of hope and happiness and freedom. I asked many of my elders about this evil, and the similarity in their answers shed a startling darkness. My parents grew up knowing the evil and ruthlessness of Viet Cong. They knew that when the Viet Cong captured Hue, thousands of people were massacred, buried alive in mass grave. One veteran of the Army of Republic of Vietnam lamented, "I don't blame the U.S. and South Vietnamese veterans of the Army of Republican Vietnam for losing. We were not evil enough." Uncle Bay, a veteran of the Army of Republic Vietnam, who went to re-education camp after the fall of Saigon, shared a story. I can see the images of his experience so vividly. In almost a whisper, he said, "The U.S. would come to the villages and visit during the day. But when nightfall, fear sets in because the VC would visit. Fear so strong it keeps whole village quiet of the evil that comes at night. Knocking would come at the door. Men in peasant garbs with guns and knives would enter and invite the head of household out to talk, to be interrogated and killed. You could get killed outside or inside. What a choice." Uncle recalled vividly holding on to his mom's shirt tail, walking through the property, looking for fingers, hands, and other body parts to put Grandpa back whole for the burial. Imagine a child experiencing this. The image and sound sears in his memory. One auntie who successfully escaped Vietnam after 13 attempts commented, "I was certain that if I stayed, there would be 100% chance of death. But if I go out to the sea, walk across Cambodia, there would be a 50% chance of survival." Now, this is high-stake betting. Today, April 30th, 2025, 50 years since, sharing our story is healing. And it is also important that younger generation of Vietnamese Americans learn these stories and understand their own. It is an opportunity for us to educate ourselves, to recognize our shared global history. Today is especially critical to hold on to these lessons so we do not repeat the mistakes of the past. By recognizing Vietnamese American Remembrance Day, Oregon is taking an important step in honoring history, resilience, and contribution of the Vietnamese community to the state. Colleagues, I urge your support on this resolution.